Hi, Destination Success. I am so excited to teach you guys about pelvic floor therapy today. Okay, I have a lot of information for you. You're probably going to want to take some notes. Also, I am going to kind of be walking through what I went through, how I found it, how it's going to help people, how you can better help people at parties, what they do at pelvic floor therapy, all kinds of stuff. So get ready, okay? Yay. Hi, Courtney. Yay. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about me. So when I had my son, he is now 11, I had what is called a third-degree tear. So if you guys don't know what that is, when you birth a baby vaginally, if you birth and there's a little tiny tear, that's like a 1. 2 is when it tears into the muscle. 3 is when it goes, you're torn from your vagina up to your rectum, and 4th degree is through your rectum. So when I had my first son, hi guys, when I had my first son, I had a 3rd-degree tear. So basically when I healed with a lot of pain and a lot of nerve damage. And when I went to the doctors, like I would consistently go to the doctors, I'd be like, this hurts, this is painful. I am, having a lot of pain when I'm standing for long periods of time. I was having, pain post-sex, like everything was painful, right? And so this was, affecting my life for many, many years. And whenever I would go to the doctor, they would say, oh, well, it's from having a baby. It's from having a baby. Actually, well, yes, it was from having a baby, but there is something that can be done about it because nobody was doing anything. So, it was 10 years post, and I ended up having a freak thing happen because of my delivery where I healed wrong. I ended up with what's called a perianal fistula and abscess. So to fix that, they had to do surgery where they had to cut through those muscles, and then they had to cut out part of my rectum. So when I was 40, I ended up having this surgery, and I specifically told my doctor, do not do the surgery if it's going to leave me incontinent. And she said, no, you'll be fine. Like I took the tiniest little bit, you'll be fine. I was not fine. So, if you have anybody at parties that is dealing with any sort of urinary incontinence, any sort of fecal incontinence, pelvic floor pain, I'm going to give you like a whole big list of things that this can help with. Okay. So for me, I was having fecal incontinence and pain, lots and lots of pain, right? And everybody kept telling me, Kegel. Okay, well, and I'm going to give you guys stats based off of what my pelvic floor therapist has told me. Okay, so my pelvic floor, okay, sorry, lost you guys there for a minute. I don't know what I hit. So all my facts are going to be based off of what I have learned in pelvic floor therapy and what my pelvic floor therapist has told me, okay? So she told me that 70% of women Kegel incorrectly. And you'd be like, well, how can you Kegel wrong? People focus on the wrong muscles and they don't actually understand how it's supposed to be like all together, okay? And so I'm going to talk about all this stuff. So because of Pure Romance, they did a symposium with PBF, and they were talking about pelvic floor therapy and basically pelvic floor pain. And I was like, what? Like, ooh, there's something that can help that. And they said pelvic floor therapy. So I immediately Googled, I'm in St. Louis, I immediately Googled pelvic floor therapy, and the woman who popped up was a mom at my kid's school. So I made an appointment to see her. She's actually a urogynecologist, and then she referred me to a pelvic floor therapist. So I started seeing pelvic floor therapist I did it for about 6 months. It got rid of my pain, and then, and was helping with the incontinence. And then we went on a family vacation to Splash and Safari and Santa World or whatever. And I stood for a long time, for 2 days. And at the end of the second day, I was in the kids section. My kids were like doing like it's like a swing set thing that's got lots of water. And I was standing there with them, and all of a sudden like felt this pain like shoot up. Like I literally felt it like from my vagina up to my stomach. I felt like something snapped, and I was like, oh my God, like I collapsed on the ground. I didn't know what happened, and I had just done too much, and my pelvic floor couldn't handle it. So we went on vacation from there to Nashville. I was in pain the whole time. We end up getting home. I go to see my pelvic floor therapist again, and she is a resident who is now gone, right? She's graduated and moved back to Pennsylvania. So I actually got in touch with a pelvic floor therapist, Minda Morris, who is a PR consultant in Alaska. And we started talking, and I told her kind of like what happened and all this complicated stuff. And she's like, you need to find a pelvic floor therapist with this designation. So I searched all of St. Louis, found this one, and my one now is amazing. So 6 more months of pelvic floor therapy and better. So I'm going to kind of tell you guys what they do there, how this can help, and things you should watch for at parties and listen for when you're in ordering to better help you help your clients, okay? Because when I was going through this, I was depressed. I did not tell anybody that this was happening to me. Fecal incontinence is embarrassing. It wasn't happening all the time. It would be more like I would have to go to the bathroom and I would have to run. Like it was like immediate. Plus I have Crohn's, so that just aggravates the whole situation. So, but like people don't talk about that. People don't talk about if you say, oh, I sneeze and pee, cough and pee, like everybody will be like, yeah, that's me. But they don't talk about the other. So, this was impacting my marriage. I was afraid to have sex because what's going to happen? Like, what's going to come out of me? Like, it was not good, right? And so a lot of people are not going to tell you these things necessarily at parties, but there are things that you can bring up and mention at parties and in your demo that will strike a chord with them and they will remember, okay? So what things pelvic floor therapy can help and who should go? For women, anyone that has pelvic floor pain that's not being helped, if they have any prolapsing, if they have any incontinence, so urinary or fecal, it can actually help prevent some women needing surgery to have like their bladder tied up, and different surgical procedures they can do because of prolapsing. A lot of people don't need the surgery if they can go see a pelvic floor therapist. My pelvic floor therapist said, I asked her one time what the average age is of people that she sees. She said 60, but that if women can get in there sooner, they're coming in at 60 because their parts are falling out and they need to have surgery. If they can get in earlier when all of these things start happening, then a lot of these surgeries can be prevented, okay? Or be a lot less invasive. Tailbone pain, vaginismus. So if you don't know what vaginismus is when your vagina basically spasms. So I had a girl who was at a party. She was 19. She was so excited to have sex for the first time. She was a virgin. And she bought some stuff, you know, she was super excited. She's like, I'm going to see you in a month at the next party and I'm going to tell you how it went. And I was like, okay, great. You know, so she's so excited. And I see her at the next party and I remember, you know, she's going to tell me all this stuff. And she comes into ordering and I'm like, hey, Lauren, like, how was it? And she starts bawling. And I was like, oh no, what happened? And she's like, my vagina was like hurting him. And I said, what do you mean? And she's like, it was spasming. Like it was clenching down on him so much, it hurt him and we had to stop. Like we couldn't do it. And I was like, did you go to the doctor? And she said, yeah. She's like, I was diagnosed with vaginismus. A lot of women with vaginismus, they have a hard time using like tampons and stuff. Like putting anything in there can trigger these spasms. And it can be... it can just be really, really painful. So I asked her what her doctor told her to do. And her doctor told her to go see a psychologist so she could learn to relax. Nope. So she was devastated. She was like, I'm never going to be able to have sex again. What am I supposed to do? And I was like, no. Pelvic floor therapy, pelvic floor therapy. So pelvic floor therapy for vaginismus can do different things with the spasms. They can do actually injections in your vaginal walls to help calm the spasms. They can do things where they can actually run their fingers inside along the vaginal wall where the nerves are, and they can help calm some of those spasms and some of those nerves and that pain. So pelvic floor therapy can help in so many ways. Women, within 2 to 3 weeks of delivery, you should be seeing a pelvic floor therapist, regardless of whether you had a C-section or a vaginal birth. Both should be seeing a pelvic floor therapist. And the reason why is because if you think about your pelvic floor as like a bowl, okay? And this bowl is holding up all of your parts, right? It's got so much work that it does. It has to be very, very strong. And so if you are pregnant in general, right, like you are carrying a baby, this is going to have to do a lot more work. And the weight of carrying a baby is going to do some damage. It can do some damage to your pelvic floor. So with what my pelvic floor therapist said is within 2 to 3 weeks of delivery, everyone should at least go to be seen. It doesn't mean you're going to have to go consistently to a pelvic floor therapist. It's just a way that you can be seen and make sure that you are Kegling correctly. They can teach you how to exercise right in the beginning when you are still recovering, hopefully so you can avoid things down the line, right? So everybody. Now, when I asked my pelvic floor therapist how often she gets referrals from gynecologists, it's rarely ever. She said most of her referrals actually come from midwives, because midwives are, more natural. They don't necessarily want all kinds of medications and all of that. And so just keep that in mind, guys, because a lot of gynecologists won't tell you about pelvic floor therapy. You're going to have to request it. You're going to have to ask for a referral depending on which state you're in. And you have to fight for your own medical care. So if your doctor isn't doing it, get a new doctor and tell them that you want to see a pelvic floor therapist. Okay. Endometriosis or PCOS. So if you have either of those, there are different things that they can do to help, like I said, with those nerves. I had 2 different women after I had gone live on my Facebook page. After I had gone live, I had said something about pelvic floor therapy, and I said, guys, if you have any issues, please message me. And if it's something that pelvic floor therapy can help, I can tell you how to find somebody and who my doctor is and all that stuff. And I had 2 different women message me. One had endometriosis, one had PCOS. They both had the same issue. They could not have sex with their partner to completion because they were in so much pain. So they were bawling. Like, they are having sex with their partner and they are bawling. And their partner doesn't want to finish because they know that they're hurting them. And it's a whole big thing, right? And they're having trouble with intimacy. It's affecting their marriage. It's affecting their relationship. And so one of them was told by her by her gynecologist, female gynecologist, to drink some wine before she did it. And the other one was told, take some pain meds before you do it. Guys, these are not viable options. These are not okay. Like, no. And so I told them about pelvic floor therapy. They started going, and like, I get messages all the time like, thank you so much, like, this has helped so much, this has helped my marriage, this has helped me. And so like, it just appalls me that doctors, this is what they're saying, like, these are options. Like, this is not okay. Okay, so we talked about how this holds everything up. So your strength, your pelvic floor strength, is rated on a scale of 0 to 5. 5 being super strong, 0 like your parts are falling out, okay? Most women post having a baby are a 3. So you're like average, right? When I went in and I had been having that pain and the incontinence and all that kind of stuff, the first thing that they do is they're going to, they're going to put a finger in and they're going to have you Kegel to see how you Kegel. Make sure you Kegel correctly, how strong your Kegel is. Because I had been going to the doctors and the gynecologist was telling me I Kegeled fine. The surgeon was telling me I was doing my like anal Kegel fine. No, it was all wrong, all wrong. So my issue was that if this is the bowl, the weight of your parts, if your pelvic floor is weak, this is going to drop down. So like at the bottom, if this is your Kegel, right? And here's your bowl, this is your Kegel. Well, my pelvic floor was so weak, it was falling. And so this squeezing, right? It couldn't squeeze and close completely because the weight of my parts pushing down on that Kegel muscle, it couldn't close completely because like this was like this, okay? So when I started seeing her, mine was a half, pelvic floor strength of a half. So when I started seeing her, I had to start doing Kegels inverted. So I had to lay on my back with my feet up on the table so it would shift all of my insides back down to where they should be with gravity, and then I could Kegel and have it be effective. They don't want you to do that long term. That's something until you get strong enough so then you can Kegel sitting, standing, like Kegel 50 different ways, okay? But you can't just like tell people at a party like, guys, this is how you Kegel and expect that they're gonna do it correctly or that their parts are going to work the way that they should to have it be effective. That's why I'm a big proponent of send them to a pelvic floor therapist, okay? Because you're not a doctor. Okay, so I had been Kegeling ineffectively for 10 years. My pelvic floor strength was super weak, and that is why I had to, I was having so many issues. So once I started learning how to do it correctly and do the exercises that they gave me, I eventually made it up to a 3. So I'm happy with that, guys. It helps with, I have no more pain. I don't have the incontinence anymore. And so it's for me, like I'm happy at a 3. If you want to get higher than that, there's different ways that they can do that. But I was happy with a 3. Now, a lot of women, you have to remember, you can't just assume that, guys, and I'm sorry, we are homeschooling right now with 4 kids and they are going to be running back and forth, okay? You cannot just assume that I forget what I was going to say with that. See, he screwed me up. Oh, okay. So, Benoit balls. This is what I was going to say about Benoit balls. I used to be somebody who at a party would be like, oh, you're sneezing and peeing, coughing and peeing. You need some Benoit balls. I don't say that anymore. Based on what I was told by both of my pelvic floor therapists, weights in there are not great for everybody because if your pelvic floor is already weak, if you have a weighted ball in there that you're trying to hold in, it can aggravate things and it can potentially do more damage because you're straining to hold that weight in. So now when people tell me that they sneeze and pee, cough and pee, all of that at a party, I don't ever really recommend that they do Benoit balls. I instead say, hey, please go see a pelvic floor therapist. And if your pelvic floor therapist is wanting you to get some Benoit balls, I'm happy to sell them to you. But I don't want to just do something because of a sale. I want them to be getting help because that's what's going to benefit them in the long run, right? Is to go see a pelvic floor therapist and get checked first. Okay. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So you cannot just assume that people are, just because somebody has had a baby, does not mean that they're going to have damage. And you cannot assume people are only having damage because they are having children. There are lots of people, there are teenagers. I was just at a party where they said their like 4-year-old had to go to a pelvic floor therapist and they had to teach her how to Kegel. Can you imagine trying to explain how to Kegel to a 4-year-old? And they had like different things that they had to do to help her understand that because she was 4. But if you, any age, if you are sneezing and peeing, coughing and peeing, spam calls, guys, sneezing and peeing, laughing and peeing, jumping and peeing, coughing and peeing, all of that, you want to let people know that it doesn't necessarily have to be from having a baby. It can just be at any age. If you're having any of the prolapsing, incontinence, any of that, that can just be from weak pelvic floor. It does not mean you have anything wrong with you in terms of like you did. It just is what it is. Okay. But go see a pelvic floor therapist. Made me think of something. I was going to tell you guys. I don't know. I'll come back to it. I also want to let you know pelvic floor therapy is also for men. So my pelvic floor therapist is amazing and she knows what I do. And so when I go in there, the stuff that she's doing to me, which I'll explain in a little bit, there's a lot of time where we're just kind of sitting there and she's just like pushing on a nerve and stuff. And I just want to ask her all the things. I want to know all the things. And so she's very good about working with me and like giving me as much information as possible because she knows I want to learn and she knows that I want to help people. And so she has, she's somebody that if you make a good relationship with a pelvic floor therapist, you can call them and say, hey, I have this client and this is what's going on with them. What would you recommend? Do you recommend that she come into you? What would you recommend that she do? So I really do highly recommend making a relationship with a pelvic floor therapist. Go see one yourself, whatever you need to do. Now with men, what she told me about men is men have a couple different things that can happen down there. One is in their sac, in their like scrotal sac, they can have this like a main vein that can get twisted. It's super excruciatingly painful for them. And when they go to the doctor, she said 9 times out of 10, the doctors say it's an infection. They give them antibiotics and then the pain doesn't go away. And I said, do they refer them to you? And she said, no. She said the way that she gets most of her male clients is that they have been through this, they've had different pain, they've gone to the doctor, and the doctor's next step is go see a pain doctor, instead of actually like solving the problem. And so, so she said she ends up a lot of the time with male clients, because they are in so much pain, they go researching on the internet and they will find somebody who has mentioned pelvic floor therapy, and then she gets a phone call and gets an appointment set up. Okay, so what happens at therapy? First thing is they're going to check your posture. I will tell you, I do not have the best posture. And if you are like me and you hyperextend, you might want to go see a pelvic floor therapist because you're putting a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor. So I'm going to show you the difference, okay? I don't know. There's lots of comments and stuff, so I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. If I am standing straight-legged with my knees locked, that's what hyperextending is, okay? So if your knees are locked, you shift your pelvis forward, right? So do you guys see how I'm standing? Like this would be super comfortable for me. I'd be kind of sway back and my pelvis would be out front. And this, if you stand like that, it puts all of your weight on your pelvic floor. So your pelvic floor is having to do a lot more work than it would normally have to do. Now the way you're actually supposed to stand is you have to gently, I know, I'm sorry guys, you can't really see this. So you have to gently bend your knees and you kind of tilt forward a little bit. And this is going to keep you more in alignment. Okay? So this is how you actually should stand. So when I'm at a party now, it has been years now of me going to pelvic floor therapy. This is how I stand, and then I'll rock and that sort of thing. But I have to think about it. every single time I am standing. It is still not a habit for me to bend my knees. So that's the first thing, is you want to make sure that you are not hyperextending. Does bad things for your body. Second thing is when you sit in a chair. So I'm going to see if I can show you guys. Okay. So if you're sitting in a chair and your legs are, you know, shoulder width apart and you're sitting up straight, you should have, usually she said, like a pillow behind you to help prop you up to sit straighter. This is how I actually like to sit, is like this. So I'm like a pretzel, okay? This gives me a great stretch here. Yeah, all of that also pulls on your pelvic floor. Not great. If you sleep how I sleep, since pelvic floor therapy, I sleep on my side with a pillow between my legs, and now I can't sleep any other way. Before pelvic floor therapy, I slept on my back with my legs like Indian style. Like, this just felt great for me. So I would just like Indian style lay back, and that was super comfy. People think it's super weird, but for me, I loved it. And she said, yeah, you like it because you hyperextend, and that all night would do a stretch on my pelvic floor. And so that's not good, right? That's weakening everything. So, okay, Shireen, if they wanted to use Benoit for pleasure, would you recommend? Depends on what they're doing with it. And if they're laying down, like it, I would say pelvic floor therapy. I refer everything to pelvic floor therapy. Okay. Okay. So they're going to check your posture, because that's a big one. Second, they are going to check your Kegel strength. So they're going to put a finger inside and they're going to have you squeeze. And you're going to realize how weak or strong you are. I was super weak. Like, if she had a finger in there and I couldn't really feel it, it's not a good sign, right? The doctors can do different things. So the first one that I went to was very big on like, we're going to do these exercises. These exercises are going to help strengthen your stuff. Because I have Crohn's and I've had 3 resections of my intestines, so I have had, and 2 C-sections of babies, I have tons and tons of scar tissue that has like wreaked havoc on my abdomen inside. And so doing these exercises, it would still feel like certain things were tight and stuff in here, and like it wasn't helping me as much as I thought it could help me. So when Minda and I talked and I found my new doctor does stuff with manual stimulation. So when I'm in there, like, I will be laying on my back, my feet will be, you know, just like my knees will be kind of propped up, and she'll put a finger in there. And the place that I am usually fired up, as she said, is right here. So if you don't know this, your pelvic floor, if you have issues with it, you can feel pain in all kinds of places. So I have this nerve right here that gets fired up on me, and shooting down my leg is another one. So when she puts a finger inside, she'll gently, like it's not painful, she'll just gently tap around, and whatever is kind of sore that day, that's what she'll work on. She'll like go like this inside, she'll do pressure on it, she'll do different things that manually stimulate that nerve. And for me, she was also doing things across my abdomen to help break up scar tissue. So I had so much scar tissue. So I loved what she was doing so much better than my other one. So you just kind of have to find a pelvic floor therapist that you think is going to be beneficial and help you the most. Like if you start seeing them and you're not feeling like you're seeing results, you know, go find somebody else. Like shop around. Like it's not a bad thing, you know. Okay. Fourth, they can do third, manual stimulation. With that, they can sometimes do things with like actual stim things. So when I was having the fecal incontinence, she was like, well, you're going to squeeze with your butt and we're going to see how strong you are. So she put these little, you know, the little sticky things that are like attached to the wires. She put that back by my butt and then she put 2 on my legs, and then there's a machine and you can squeeze and it'll tell you how strong you are, and then you release and it'll show you like what your resting tone is. So they have all these crazy machines that can also help with things too, but it was helpful for her to see how my stuff was working and how it wasn't. And it was interesting for me to see too. Fourth, you go home and you do exercises. So they're going to give you, like different, ooh, sorry guys, things are blowing up. You're going to go home and they're going to give you exercises to do. So they walk you through how to do the exercises there. I meant to grab my picture. It's usually like a picture of a body, like a stick figure, and it shows you kind of what to do. So you have a reminder, and then they'll put like, you need to do this many reps, this many times a day. And you need to do this multiple times a week, right? So normally what you do is you go home, you do your exercises, and then you return. So depending on how much damage there is there or how much stuff needs to be fixed, like I was a big old hot mess. I was going weekly. So I was going like every Wednesday for 6 months. And then she was like, well, do you think we can go a month? Do you think we can go 2 months? Like, keep doing your exercises. And then I was fine. And I would keep doing that unless something happened. And then I would just call her and say, hey, what should I do to help this nerve? This is where it hurts. Which exercise should I do? And then she would just tell me, so I didn't have to go in. Alexandra, yes, insurance covers it. It's considered physical therapy. The only tricky thing is that there's 2 or 3 states left in America where you have to have a referral for pelvic floor therapy. So you would need to get like a gynecologist or a urogynecologist to refer. Okay, so I did want to mention, when you have pelvic floor pain, for me, I never see this as something that's going to be done. Like right now, I don't currently have pain, but different things can trigger stuff to where you then need to start going again. So just pay attention to that. For me, okay, so babies, right? You may have had a perfect delivery the first time, and then the next time you are totally torn up. Maybe you just have a lot of damage. Maybe you had no incontinence and now you do. Whatever it is, babies are a big one. Car accidents. So I had a car accident last year where my car got totaled. Like, I hit a brick wall going like 50 miles an hour. It was black ice. And I was strapped in. I had a seatbelt. But when I got out of the car, what actually hurt me was my pelvic floor. And I called my doctor and I asked her, and she was like, yeah, she's like, because your insides have just been thrown, right, and up against the seatbelt. And so that triggered things. So then I had to see her again for a couple months. So just be aware of different events that can cause trauma, because that is something that will definitely get fired up if you have issues there already. So just kind of be aware of that. Just kind of like when we were at that, Holiday World. Like, I was fine. I was doing great. I had been out of pelvic floor therapy for a couple of months. And then walking just was too much for my body and fired it up. You also have to be very careful when you're exercising. So they teach you at pelvic floor therapy, if you are like lifting weights and stuff, how to do it correctly. That was something I was going to tell you. So if you've had a baby vaginally, the one thing that my pelvic floor therapist said that happens, that she sees all the time, is that once you've had a baby, because you have pushed so hard, that your body, when you sneeze or cough, your body automatically wants to push out instead of pulling in. So that was something that they said to work on right away, is anytime you sneeze or cough, just try it. You're sitting at home. If you go to cough, do you push out or do you pull in? So if you push out, you need to start paying attention. And when you cough, you want to pull in. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, I think that's all I had for you guys today. I mean, I'm a wealth of knowledge about pelvic floor therapy, so if you have questions, you can feel free to message me. Follow me on Facebook. Please don't friend me. If you message me, I can message you back. Oh, I did want to give you a resource. If you are in the United States, this is the website that I always tell people at parties to go to find pelvic floor therapists if they are not in the area and I can't refer mine to them. So it's called Women's Health APTA, APTA, Women's Health APTA.org. And then at the very top, when you go to that website, at the very top, it'll have a thing on the top right that says PT locator. And that's to help find pelvic floor therapists in the area. And they go in and it'll put in their zip code and it'll pull up ones in the area. Now, I did want to mention too how I kind of bring this into my demo. So hopefully this will be kind of helpful for you. If you are, okay, so the way I teach my demo is the 5 orgasms, right? So clitoral, vaginal, G-spot, nipple, anal. So when I get to the vaginal orgasm and I talk about, okay guys, the first 1 to 2 inches of your vagina are the most sensitive. If you love the feeling of penetration, vaginal orgasm is probably the one you're wanting, right? And so the way that you would get that is by using a toy that goes inside. This can stimulate this, like all this stuff, right? And I say to them, okay, so how many, like, you don't have to say raise your hand or anything, but yes, Shirley, I can. If you are somebody who sneezes and pees, coughs and pees, jumps and pees, laughs and pees, right, have any sort of the incontinence, I would recommend you go see a pelvic floor therapist. You don't have to deal with that if it's from childbirth. You don't have to deal with that from having a baby. You don't have to have had a baby to have that happen. But you want to make sure that you're seeing a pelvic floor therapist. They can help with endometriosis, PCOS, pelvic floor pain, tilted uterus pain, incontinence, prolapse, all these different things, right? And at that point in my demo, I always have women who are like, I've never heard of that. Why have I never heard of that before? That's how I was. 10 years of pain. Why had I never heard of that? So I try to give that information at every single party to put that out there that that's a thing. Pelvic floor therapy is a thing and people need to know about it. We should all know about it. Why do people not talk about it? Super duper important, and it can help so many things. So almost every single party, I have a woman who comes into ordering and says, can you give me the website for that pelvic floor therapist or tell me who yours is? Because I've been peeing myself for 10 years. Guys, this is unacceptable. And then I had something else I was going to tell you guys too. I don't know. If I remember, I'll post it in the comments. Thank you, Courtney, for posting that. Do you guys have any other questions for me? I'll hang on here for a minute if you guys have questions. Like I said, a lot of the time I defer to the pelvic floor therapist because I am not a doctor. But I just tell you kind of what I went through. And guys, the fecal incontinence, people don't talk about that. Oh, that's what I was going to tell you. Okay, so if you don't know this, this is part of the reason why I bring this up at every party, because we're talking about women's sexual health information, right? But people are embarrassed. It is embarrassing and depressing, and I was mortified. And but I found out from my pelvic floor therapist that there are so many women with a weak pelvic floor to the back. So if your front is your pubic bone, right, and the back, pelvic floor back there being super weak and prolapsing, that there are women everywhere who have to put a finger or two inside and push up that back wall so they can have a bowel movement. I was like, what? And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, I see that all the time. So there's this stuff going on that people don't talk about, that people need to talk about so we can help each other. Yes? Okay. Okay, so Shireen, I don't talk about them. The Benoit balls or the exercise her. I don't. Mainly because I tell people to go see the pelvic floor therapist, and then when we are in ordering, if they're like, I want those, I'm like, okay, you know, what are you trying to improve? And then we talk about pelvic floor therapy and kind of go from there. My pain is actually related to pelvic. Yes, Nicole. Yeah, a lot of people with the back pain. I get neck pain because I have herniated discs in my neck. But if this is weak, this is fired up a lot. Okay, I'm just going to hang out for like a minute if you guys have any other questions. Thanks for tuning in. I know you guys are getting a plethora of information today. And if you missed any of it, just kind of go back to the beginning. Okay, I don't see a lot of questions. Oh wait, so what products do we sell that can help them? And do you say see your therapist? Antoinette, yes, that's what I choose to do. I don't. So the exercise her is better than Benoit balls because it's wider. It's going to usually stay up in there versus like be falling out super easily like a Benoit ball, which is much smaller. But here's the thing. Whether you are selling them Benoit balls or exercise her, you still need to make sure that they're using it correctly. And if you don't know how to explain that to them, then I would tell them, I'm happy to sell them to you, but please go see a pelvic floor therapist first and see how they would recommend that you utilize these. Oh, Danielle, good question. Okay, so for me, sure, there's a long leg. Okay. Do they recommend yoga? Yes. You have to be careful when you're doing yoga, which stretches, not to hyperextend. That was the biggest thing that they told me, is if you are somebody who hyperextends like I do, you want to make sure that you are not hyperextending when you are doing yoga. So like if you're putting your leg out straight, make sure that your knee is still a little bent, or like different poses. You have to, they teach you in pelvic floor therapy how to relax and how to like tighten and when to do that. So like when you're lifting and when you're doing different exercises, they teach you all of that. And so yes, they recommend you can do yoga. You just have to be careful when you're doing it, that you are not doing something that's going to trigger you or fire you in a certain way. Okay, I see there's a long leg. Any other questions? Okay, if you guys have any other questions, just comment them below on here and I will give you the best response that I can. Otherwise, thanks so much for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it'll help you help your clients more. Physical therapy, lower back pain after a series of exercises and questions and texts. It's actually to pelvic floor weakness. Yes. Let's see. And just like Julia mentioned, herniated discs can cause pain to go even higher. Yes. Displaced hips. Yes, Nicole. Yeah. But it's good that you're checking for those things, because otherwise people will target what is where the pain is instead of doing an overall assessment. And then they're just trying to fix the one thing instead of what the actual cause is. So it's great to, it's great that you guys are doing that. Yes, Stacy, 100%. The saddest thing is when I'm at a party and I let people know like that so much of this can be helped and be surgeries can potentially be prevented with pelvic floor therapy. And then, like, they're sad. They're like, I can't believe this was never given to me as an option. Like, my doctor was just like, we need to go do this therapy or go do the surgery. And it's sad, right? Like, surgery can cause more issues sometimes. So anytime we can avoid cutting is always a good thing. Okay. Bye, guys. Comments if you have questions. I'll jump back on. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful. Help all your women at parties. Spread the news about pelvic floor therapy. And I will come up and say hi when we are at Actual World Conference. I hope to see you guys all soon. Okay, bye.